The subject today is AI in the contact center ecosystem. So artificial intelligence very much has arrived now, and so we're going to be exploring that very interesting theme. So the agenda then, we'll quickly look at the evolution of AI. How has artificial intelligence come to be where it is? Then AI in the contact center ecosystem is very much one of the first landing points of AI in terms of application in the world. So first, let's have a look at the evolution of AI. So like any evolution, this is an ongoing process. So we're by no means at the end, but nor are we at the beginning. So we talk about a primordial soup. And so, many little kind of microbes and enzymes and amoeba have kind of emerged. Some of them have gone nowhere. A typical evolutionary path, really, since artificial intelligence first became a thing after the Second World War and the big strides in computing advancement that went on then. But three large-scale general-purpose technologies have emerged as kind of dominant in AI. And relevant for us, very much so, in the customer experience world, is natural language processing. And then you've got image recognition, and then lastly, structured and unstructured data analysis. So firstly, natural language processing. It started out with the processing of text. If you think back to people typing into computers and some of these old videos that you've probably seen, and they're kind of having a stilted conversation with a computer. It's probably a massive mainframe computer back then. That was kind of 50 years ago. That's evolved then into text bots, from SMS to chat bots using IM technologies. And now, of course, natural language processing applied to the thing that defines us as humans, the human voice. So now we're able to take the voice, make it into text, then we can treat it just with the same precision as we could if we're handling an email or an SMS message or a WhatsApp. So NLP, really vitally important technology. Firstly, kind of coming in at the beginning of the spoken transaction, now listening all the way through, contributing, and even having that complete conversation, just like it can in a chatbot situation. Image recognition, fast becoming highly useful, and particularly since the pandemic, we're seeing a massive rise in photo sending in a customer experience setting. Obviously, video as well as another factor that's become of considerable importance through the pandemic. Slightly less evolved at this point, but definitely something to be aware of, to start using and seeing where you can begin to apply that within your customer experience environment. And then, of course, the big one is the mass sifting of data, structured and crucially unstructured data. More than 80% of the useful data you've got is in the form of notes and other sources, not necessarily neatly arranged within your customer CRM. So the ability to sift that, to derive meaning from it, to find patterns in it, that's all highly useful, but largely a kind of underpinning. So what has kind of made that important now, and something that's more applicable, is the fact that there are tools to use these. So whereas previously it would be a kind of scientist in a lab coat, now these are things that are readily applicable and you can actually utilize right now in your contact center. So we're kind of coming out of the primordial soup then. So this is a mud flapper. It's a fish actually. You can walk around on land for 3, 4, even 5 days, unaided, and then kind of go back in the water. So I think that's kind of where we are in AI. It's just kind of coming out of the soup onto land. So we like to think of this kind of ascent of man model. And the second one in there, I think that's where we are now, AI-backed intelligent automation. So obviously the first stage, as it applies to the customer experience, was individual kind of point machine learning tools. So evolving from algorithms to learning algorithms to machine learning. So it could start to make basic decisions and provide decision support. Where we're moving next is the digital customer experience. So that's really where all of us in the kind of CCaaS, the contact center as a service, or at the leading edge of it anyway, are looking towards in the 5-year horizon now, is this evolution to the digital customer experience. We've got a lot of the parts already. So as I say, we're in this sort of semi-hominid stage here. And where we're going to end up is fully artificially intelligent contact centers. There'll always be a place for humans, but many advantages to being mainly AI driven. You might say, well, we've already got pretty good arrangements already. We've got big telephone systems from the traditional vendors. However, just as the dinosaurs of the late Cretaceous era were highly evolved, so the fact that these things are massive and seemingly very adapted to their environment is also the very reason why they are kind of at the end of their line. Whereas these less mature technologies that have come from the cloud, that have evolved from AI and machine learning technologies, whilst they may seem kind of less impressive in some ways than these big dinosaurs, these are very much the future. And you can see the meteor strike coming to kind of spell the end for these big beasts. And definitely we can see that big meteor coming through the sky now. So all part of this kind of dead-end gene pool in our Darwinian metaphor. So 3 factors have really contributed to the speeding up of this process. So firstly, we need to offer 24/7 omni-channel service. It's great we've got a big phone system, it's well optimized. A phone system doesn't do TikTok, it doesn't do WhatsApp, it doesn't do email, it doesn't do video really, it doesn't do text messages, IM chat. All the things that you're now expected to be able to do, you might find you can't do. And also, of course, it can work around the clock. So, running all of these services from some kind of integrated contact center around the clock, hugely expensive. And then, of course, the need to offer self-service automated options to your customers. Increasingly, consumers like to self-serve. I mean, we do it all the time. We do certainly most of our research online in digital environments, and we like to carry that research across into a self-serve transaction increasingly. And AI, great for doing that, can track what you've been looking at, what you've been doing, while you've been perhaps on a site, on an app, and then enabling that self-serve. And then the kind of big meteor has really been the coronavirus over the last 2 years. So people have needed to work from home all of a sudden. Perhaps if you've been running a legacy phone-based on-premise type environment, where perhaps these other channels of communication, your chat, your email, your WhatsApp, those have been coming in and you're integrating them on your site, you haven't been able to do that when everyone's at home because you don't have that converging location of the site. And things like PCI DSS card transactions, you're no longer able to do those compliantly from home. And that caused a big problem for thousands of organizations, which meant that once they got out of survival mode, first thing on the agenda was, right, CX is life or death for our organization, for any organization. We need to get a proper plan in place for transition out of the dinosaur and into the bird. So we view change generally, and AI certainly, is kind of like a speeding train. You're standing on some country station platform somewhere, you see an express train coming. It's not going to be stopping at the station. You see it coming in the distance, you see the front, it's yellow. It doesn't seem to be moving all that fast. It's kind of approaching quite slowly. And suddenly when it gets up to you, whoosh, it's coming through at tremendous speed. And so we always say that with technological change, it approaches slowly and then arrives very suddenly. So really that's where we are with AI. The difference between technology and nature is that dinosaurs, that's 55, 60 million years ago, to kind of our state of humankind now, for better or worse. So that's a massively long time. This evolution, we're talking about just a handful of years. So that sudden evolutionary change is what you obviously need to master and adapt to. So I said that AI was arriving first in the contact center because technologies find the place where they can have their first application. So just as with earlier technologies such as I don't know, the video or the cinema, they found their early application. So the contact center and the customer experience environment is the first point where AI technologies can be readily applied and really put to work to competitive advantage in a way that's not going to bankrupt anybody. So that's driven by the consumer. Now, the consumer has this 24/7 expectation. They want to interact with you like they do with their friends. So anytime, wherever they are, whichever device they happen to be on. So as an organization, your role is to be kind of up to the communication levels of the friend of the consumer. So if you think about it, the consumer is already omni-channel. So they're using the smartphone already. If my mother sends me a video, usually it's not that funny, but when she then calls me a couple of minutes later, she expects me to have had a look at that, understood it, and maybe we'll have a little chat about it. Sometimes they are quite funny, to be fair to her. So if the same experience applied to the brand, maybe there'd been a communication in one channel, and now they're contacting the contact center, they expect you to know about this other thing that they've sent you. So obviously you don't know anything about that. You're asking who they are, what they want. That's a very frustrating experience for this already omni-channel kind of smartphone adapted consumer. And let's remember, many young people have grown up only really knowing the smartphone era. They don't really know even really what a landline is, what it's for. So AI in the contact center then, as I mentioned earlier with the meteor strike analogy, COVID has fueled the trends. In this case, it's because everyone has had to use self-service digital channels because contact centers were closed, shops were closed, offices were closed. They needed to carry on with their life, getting their insurance, ordering their groceries, everything else they would normally need to do. And they've needed to do that themselves using their online devices. So that kind of forcing at first has now become a preferred channel. And we talked about these young people who've only known the mobile era, but actually, surprisingly enough, what's emerged post-pandemic is these are the top three age brackets with a percentage of customers who prefer digital channels, 65 to 79. I was quite surprised when I saw that. Even more than number two, 80 plus. So these guys have had time on their hands. They've had the leisure and the need. They've been forced into these channels. Now they find they rather like them. They can do all their own research and keep on top of things. And then 55 to 64, which increasingly I'm not that far. I can see that on my distant horizon. So those people aren't really old. But anyway, so older age groups are heavily in favor of digital channels now. So where does AI fit into all this? So the AI tools are the key. So AI tools mean you can apply those general purpose technologies, the AI of NLP, the AI of image recognition, and the AI of data sifting and unstructured data processing, and apply them in different ways. So to deliver a customer experience that is the crucial differentiator now. I mentioned insurance earlier. If you think of insurers, all of them offer the policy, there's a premium, there's an excess. You can see pretty much what you're getting on the page. What differentiates one from another is the experience you have. Do they just contact you when it's time to renew and maybe say, do you want 5% off? Yeah, all right. Or do they kind of, even worse, put the price up a bit and bargain on the fact that you're not going to go looking around elsewhere? Organizations need to scale. So scaling is all the thing, but they want to do it without a corresponding one-to-one cost increase. And crucially, they need to offer that 24/7 service, omni-channel. So whether they want to use Facebook Messenger or TikTok or Viber or WhatsApp, as well as for traditional channels, and to use video, of course, then organizations who want to provide that increasingly turning to AI tools to enable all of this to work. So 3 factors then combining now, to make it the time to implement AI in your contact center. So you've got that proliferation of easy to use communication devices that we've seen consumers have got, the iPhones, Android phones, etc. The availability of the AI tools, so you don't need a data scientist in your organization, or worse still, a team of them, which are very hard to find, by the way. And then you can just use the tools and put them to work immediately. And then underpinning or overlaying, depending how you look at it, are these big cloud platforms that can deliver these AI tools into your customer experience, and that can be available anywhere. Our Storm platform, great example. We started it in the UK, which is the second largest contact center market in the world by value. We've rolled it out into Europe, then we came to Asia, and then lastly we went to North America. So the same platform is available with different availability zones, different support arrangements in time zone, but essentially the same thing available anywhere on the planet for any consumer of any organization. So then the opportunities are also threats. So you have to use customer experience to your advantage, or your competitors will. So it's not enough to say, well, I've got another 3-4 years on my old on-premise telephone system, I'll wait till then, or maybe I'll try and see it out to my retirement. It's got to be acted on very quickly. It's like this train analogy. It's arriving very suddenly, and organizations need to use that customer experience to create this competitive advantage for themselves. Leveraging the tools and the technologies from the cloud providers, that's obviously key, rather than reinventing the wheel. And then obviously the ability of the cloud providers to deliver on the promise of AI, and make it economical, at scale, easy to use, easy to consume. As we say, engagement made easy. That means you can apply it very readily in your organization, whether it's a business or a public sector organization. So here are a few of the uses and some examples. So knowledge management. In the NHS 111 urgent care service, which is massive in the UK where I come from, agents are fed information as the call proceeds based on what's being said, and lots of different health and care information systems. Automated inquiry resolution at Companies House, the government agency here, where all organizations, companies have to register themselves and file their accounts and so on. A lot of inquiries are basically self-served now through, we've analyzed which are the most common. We've created pathways using natural language processing, and a lot of those inquiries don't need even to go into the contact center anymore. Intelligent routing, Interflora, who deliver the flowers. If you are a repeat customer, you'll go to your usual florist. So you've got that personalized experience at scale. If you are a florist, you've got totally separate pathways from the same entry point. So that's key. You don't have lots of entry points. You have a single front door, and then you do all the intelligent sifting once people are inside there. Updating record systems. So NHS, again, largest organization in Europe, something that's going to come up a bit. Repeat callers, we find out if they're worsening. If the symptoms are worsening, we prioritize them. If they're not, we use NLP to find out why it is they're calling them, and we would try and process them in an automated way. We're also using, in the same NHS, we're using natural language processing as part of automated audit of health professionals to see which ones are performing adequately or which need further analysis. Sentiment, again, NLP very good at analyzing whether people are angry, for example. So if we've got the angry caller, we can put them to the agent that's well versed in dealing with angry people, diffusing the situation. We can make sure that the agent doesn't receive too many angry calls, because we don't want to be using them just as a sort of sink of anger. Complex inquiries. So EDF Energy, massive French energy company. We've got 16 different types of complex processes, down to 2 when it comes down to people inquiring about tariff changes, which is the most common reason they contact that organization. Identification and verification. UK Power Networks, the biggest energy distributor here, covering London, the southeast, east of England, 20 million plus people. We identify from postcodes vulnerable people. So is it a care home with 30 elderly people? Is this someone we think has a dialysis machine? So the loss of power will be crucially important for them. Same organization is now, when it's very busy, 93% self-service, at the same time as they've moved to 93% customer satisfaction. So that means, of course, the human agent's work evolves as well. We're taking out a lot of the algorithmic work and we're concentrating on work fit for humans, empathetic tasks, decision-making tasks, and that means a different career path that's much more interesting and rewarding. So we've got the digitally assisted AI-powered human. So what we might call the rise of machines. So we've got a machine agent now working alongside a human agent. So it's not there to destroy, like Skylab, but actually it's there to support and enhance the agent experience, cutting down on expensive agent churn, which costs US dollars about 9,000 a year, 9,000 an agent in direct replacement costs, and all sorts of disruption costs for you as an organization. So AI working alongside to enhance, not replace. So popping up the right data, because it can be listening during a conversation. So before it comes in, a contact, the AI will be pre-processing it. While it's going on, it will be continuing to feed. So real-time translation, we've got chatbots going from English to Japanese and back again in real time. We're now experimenting with doing the same thing with spoken voice and actually deploying that as an overflow in a medical environment. Dynamic scripting, so the agent's not having to do so much training. Intelligent routing, making sure we're getting the right person, the 24/7 aspect, and bringing all the channels together. So where you've got machine agents, human agents are happier and more productive.